All right, I have a couple of prepared questions that I'm going to go through the panel here in a minute. But to get us started, I want to give you each an opportunity just to tell us a little bit about yourselves if you'd like to, and whatever other information you'd like to start with. So I'll start on this side.
Good afternoon. I'll speak not about myself so much, but I'll speak about my organization, Mercer County Communities That Care. We are a collaborative board here in the county, prevention board. If you are not yet a part of it, we would love for you to be. We meet monthly, and this is welcome to any and all organizations. So we talk about collaboration and how important it is and how integral it is in a successful community. And we do have that here in Mercer County. We obviously can do more and we can do better, but we have great groundwork already built. Mercer County Communities That Care, we are data driven. And so we use the data that we have here in the county to make decisions as to what programs we bring here, what practices we have, what policies need to be made. I don't want to go a whole lot into what we use quite yet, but I will talk to you a little bit about some of the data that we use and what we do see here in Mercer County.
Hello, my name is Bailey Sheppard, and I am a junior here at Teal. I'm a public relations, advertising, and integrated marketing communications major, and I am also from West Middlesex, so I am local, and I am involved. I'm a Kiwanian, which is weird if someone my age being a member of Kiwanis, and yeah, it honestly is kind of strange. And I'm also the president of the Teal College Community Garden Club, which I'm incredibly involved with.
Hello, I'm Sheri Valimont, and as Mickey said, I'm here representing the Parents as Teachers Family Centers in Mercer County. Family Centers have been working with Mercer County families since 1992, and we are a free and voluntary program serving the full spectrum of families. There are no income guidelines. A lot of our families are just parents that want to be sure their kids are ready to succeed when they get into kindergarten, or some families that are referred to us possibly from children and youth or the hospitals, pretty high needs families, those sorts of things. We do use the Parents as Teachers curriculum, which is an evidence-based home visiting curriculum, nationally recognized for its outcomes. And it essentially has 4 components. Those are home visits, personal visits with the families, parenting education, child development information, those sort of things, family strengthening. Group connections, which we have meetings throughout the month across the county at all the family center locations, and they can be anything from maybe a speaker on sibling rivalry to a make and take craft night, depending on what our parents are interested at that time. Huge component is the health and developmental screenings for everyone in the home, making sure that they get the services they need when they need them. And finally, providing a resource network for the families enrolled in the center. Now, kind of hard to describe in our 5-minute time limit what we do, and I thought when I first spoke with Mickey, she asked if we could talk about some of the resources available in the county, and I thought the easiest way to do that is to describe one of my favorite success stories from the Family Center. This is a family that came to us through referral from children and youth. It was mom, dad, newborn, and a 2-year-old. They lived in a trailer, which they owned, on property that they owned, and they were very happy about that. Grandmother also lived in the home, and their source of running water in the home was a hose coming in through the window, but still very prideful that they owned that property and it was theirs. We started working with the family. The first child obviously had a speech delay. We got him connected with early intervention, got him some PTOT, speech therapy to address that. The concern at the hospital with the pediatrician was a safe sleep environment for the newborn coming home, and we connected them with the Cribs for Kids program through Children's Aid Society, and we're able to get them a pack and play so that they had that safe sleep environment and some education about what that would be. And these 2-year-olds' immunizations were also behind, so again, we connected them with Primary Health Network to get those immunizations caught up for that child as well. As part of the Parents as Teachers program, we also set and address a family goal. We use the life skills progression screening, a lot of you probably have heard of that, to set that goal. It measures family strengths and family needs. And the first goal was for the family was that the only income in the home was grandma's Social Security. Mom got a small Social Security disability check because she had some intellectual disabilities as well. And that was the only income they had supporting this family of 5. And by the end of the month, they were always short on food, and that was a real concern for them with the 2 kids at home. So we connected them with the WIC program, Community Food Warehouse, and the Good Shepherd Center in Greenville, so that was something that we took care of. They had the resources there to use that. At the next visit, we addressed that goal, thought we did pretty well at meeting it, and they set a second goal. And that goal really for the family was that they were concerned that they never had any discretionary funding. They didn't have any money for anything but bare essentials, and it was difficult for the family. So the parent educator working with them talked about that and what are some things we could do. Well, finally, they boiled down to that Dad, who lived in the home, also had a vehicle, and possibly he could get a job. He had never had a job in his life. No one had ever worked in that family outside of the home. So we worked with the career link office and a lot of resources they had there, worked on developing a resume, putting down some skills, how you go about gathering applications, assisted them with filling out the applications, and eventually Dad got a job. Did well with that, had some money coming into the home, new for them, life-changing in their family. We worked on some budgeting things as well because this is something they needed to address now. But with this family that had never worked before, Dad worked that first month, got that first paycheck, and lo and behold, what do you think Dad did? Didn't go to work the next few days. So we started that process over, but now he had a few more skills that he could put on his application, and he was able to get another job. Been working at that job, doing well, getting a few more hours, and decided to move on to the third family goal, which was their older child at this time was getting ready to go to kindergarten. Mom and Dad both had pretty negative experience with their public education. Dad, in fact, dropped out in 7th grade. Really concerned. They worked with their parent educator. They established a rapport so that they could talk about what sort of things. Dad's big concern was that he was labeled the stinky kid when he went to school and just had a miserable experience with that. And I mentioned early in the story that they owned their own home, they owned the piece of property, but their only running water was that hose coming in through the window. So to get a bath or anything, wash clothes, anything for the family, they had to fill up pots, heat it on the stove, fill the tub until they could get everyone in. So that was like a once weekly thing. We talked to them about possibly considering other housing options as well, but that was just something they weren't interested in. Worked through this goal, decided that, this is really going to be difficult to get him to school every day, get him his bath, have clean clothes. And finally, they decided to look into some different housing. With his income and the income from the family and through the housing authority, we were able to get them into a nice apartment that they had running water and access to laundry as well. Glad to say that when this child entered kindergarten, although when we found him at 2.5, had a pretty significant language delay, he was able to start school on target with his peers and is doing well. And Dad has kept a job now for over 3 years and has moved up a little bit in through the system. Yeah, so that it completely changed their thinking, their way of life. It wasn't something they had ever considered before, but just with the supports that are available, we're so fortunate in Mercer County, we were able to change that family's life. So, April.
Good morning. I am Dr. Adel Torrance, and you could read a lot about me in my biography and my bio, but I am here to tell you about April Avery. Some of you may remember. And to be that voice of young moms who have been stuck in trauma for years and various layers of unmet needs and how that can happen. In my 5 minutes, I have to tell you my little pet peeve, and that is I get very upset when people say, I was born this way and I was on the other side of the railroad tracks and we didn't have this or we didn't have that, but I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps and we made it, and I'm standing here today. That's not my story. Everyone doesn't have bootstraps, and some people don't have boots to even put on. So that doesn't apply to everyone. What I would like to sound the alarm on is something that happened to me 2 days before my 10th birthday. It was April the 10th, 1977, on an Easter Sunday morning, where I was on my way home from Sunday school, because I was raised in a faith-based home, and all the local children rode on this church bus who came through the community and took all of the children from the hood, because that's where we were, right, out to Hermitage to the Pentecostal church. Unfortunately, that particular Easter Sunday morning, we were probably about 500 feet from my home when a family of 5 exited the bus, and some of us were still on there, and one little girl went to retrieve her Sunday school paper because it had gone underneath the bus, and the driver didn't know, and the rest speaks for itself. I often say the last thing I remember is the mother who was not on that bus. Neither was our mother. None of the mothers went on the bus, or fathers. They just trusted the church to take the children off. She was beating on the bus driver, just beating him down. You killed my child. You killed my child. And that was a memory, a traumatic event that I suppressed for 40 years. And because I suppressed that memory, and because my parents, although Christians, did not know that I probably should have had counseling, and I had all these unmet needs, then I went through my high school years of being the cheerleader, the teenage drunk, living a life of promiscuity, finding myself in statutory date rape situations that were unreported, again, because I didn't know that I was supposed to. And so over the years, it took that 40th year for me to realize that it all stems back to that event on April the 10th, 1977, and me not getting the counseling that I needed to overcome that traumatic event, and then a series of more events to come. So what I'm saying today is I represent the voice also of a group of children, and in their first 2,000 days of life at the pre-K level, before they transitioned to kindergarten, like the little girl who was killed underneath the bus, to be that voice to let people know that a lot can happen in the first 2,000 days of life, but because usually that child hasn't developed their voice yet, they typically don't tell what happened. Those behaviors usually show up in the pre-K classroom. Now fast forward to October 31st, 2019, when I had to relive this traumatic event. My goddaughter called me from Alabama on Halloween evening and informed me that her 3-year-old son had been killed after being ran over by his 15-year-old sister, leaving the daycare, and killed on impact as the other sibling had to stand by and watch all this happen. So here I am again, 3 days from a funeral in Alabama, of making sure that my goddaughter gets the systematic support, the counseling, and everything that is needed for her 15-year-old daughter, who has now killed her baby brother accidentally, and another sibling who actually watched all of this. If we don't get the services provided for this family in Alabama, it will continue to reoccur and will have historical trauma. So this is what I say to you today, after talking to Mickey and a few others about how does someone get stuck? How does someone get stuck in trauma, and how do they get the resiliency to move forward? Well, let me talk about stuck. First of all, anytime when you look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that most mothers are trying to, at least a single mom, hold a job down to take care of her children, put a roof over their head, clothes on their backs, hopefully buy some bootstraps, I say that with intention, and make sure that they're not homeless. And while they're doing that, usually, sometimes safety is compromised. If there's not adequate child care available and they find themselves leaving their children in a setting where safety is compromised, and before you know it, something traumatic or something tragic has happened. I've lived it and I just relived it. So in that moment, you have either met needs or unmet needs. And in this case, if you're stuck in trauma, you have unmet psychological needs, whether the parent refuses to get you counseling or whether the parent does not know to get you counseling. But we do know that we need to have our children in some sort of counseling so that they can overcome these traumatic experiences. If not, if there are unmet physiological needs and psychological needs, my concern is that that particular child does not, they don't have the collaborations of people coming together and helping them to cope. And I've never met Audrey or Harry before, but their presentation is everything that I have lived. And because I didn't get positive coping skills, I chose the negative coping mechanisms that resulted in 3 unplanned pregnancies, a lot of trauma, a lot of neglect, emotional abuse. My A score was 1, but because I've been in trauma right now, my oldest child, his A score would be 5 or higher because I raised him as a single parent. So we know that we need someone in place to help with those coping skills. And if not, this is the truth. You end up with young girls who are knocked up or young boys who are locked up. And these are the families that I serve on a daily basis. They're either knocked up with maybe child number 3 or 4 and they don't know how to move forward, or the father or the baby's dad may be locked up and they're just trying to hold it down on their own. So in lieu of that, let me ask this question. How many of you were at my prenatal to prison pipeline symposium? Okay, so this whole center out here. Let me thank you for coming together and sitting at individual tables to address homelessness, drug addiction, domestic violence, truancy, and so many different problems that are associated with children in trauma, and coming up with resources and a strategic plan to address those needs. Because of that, we were able to launch the Children and Youth Prevention and Empowerment Network with the support of the Buhl Regional Health Foundation, and there are brochures. If you want brochures, you could see Pastor B.J. Pleasant up front, our project manager. We were able to launch this with Buhl, also with support from Mercer County Behavioral Health and the Strimbu Foundation. We spent the last year putting together these crisis response teams and bringing who we call our GGs, our 4-generation network of women into the facility to bring the voice back of the grandmother who may be missing in the family and help our children in trauma right there on site in the agency through Passstone. So there are a lot of things going on at Zion Education Center, which is a reflection of my life and the family that we serve. And we would like everyone who has a heart and passion for children in trauma to help us transform trauma by getting involved. I have a video. I don't know if it'll be shown. If not, oh, you have it? Okay, all right, let's conclude with that.
Thank you for those opening remarks. All right, next I'd like to hear if Laura could explain a little bit about the PACE study and then what some of our own students in the region are telling us.
All right, thank you, Dr. Butcher. I mentioned briefly that we use a data-driven approach here, Mercer County Communities That Care, and one of the most important pieces of data that we use is the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. That is a survey that is given every 2 years to students in grades 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. The data that we currently are using is 2017. The survey is just now the 2019 is just now being conducted, and the results of that will be out in mid-2020. So this is a voluntary survey, and it gives students the opportunity to, in their own voices, let us know what's going on with them. So we're not guessing. A lot of what the PACE asks students is questions on drug and alcohol use, tobacco, vaping, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and there's also a section on this on traumatic and stressful events. So I could talk to you all day about the PACE and the results that we have here in our county, and I'm very pleased to tell you that we have support from all of the school districts here in our county. So each school district gets a report, so they have a snapshot of what's going on in their own district. But at CTC, we use the huge 150-page county-wide report, so we get a bigger picture of what's going on in the county. So what we are seeing is, not so much of the drug and alcohol use that's suspected, but when we talk about stressors with the kids, we do see a lot of depression and anxiety within our youth. This is 42% of the students in Mercer County report that they feel sad or depressed on most days. 20% of the students here in our county say that they have considered suicide. So these statistics are alarming. The PACE has been administered since 1989. We have been tracking this. The additions of the depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideations all came around 2011. And unfortunately, we've seen that rise every 2 years when the PACE is out. But what's interesting is in the last survey, the traumatic and stressful events is now a section in here that's being looked at. And there are questions on there for students asking if they have, on grief, if they have lost a parent or a loved one, if they've had a parent incarcerated. But what we have seen here is the top 3 most frequently reported stressful events in our county is changing of homes often. And changing of homes often means losing friends, losing identity, having to learn an entire new school, having really no sense of neighborhood and no belonging. And the other ones that you may be surprised about is worrying about running out of food because of money issues in the home. 15% of the students here in our own county, I'm not talking about national or state statistics, I'm talking about Mercer County statistics, 15% of students report that they worry on a daily basis about running out of food, skipping meals because there simply was not any food in the house, and living away from home from either being kicked out or abandoned. And those stressful situations, we talk about, when we talk about trauma, it's not always tragedy or a tragic event. These are traumatic, stressful situations that kids face, and this affects their school attendance, it affects their academic performance, it affects their behavior. So these are things that we know that can also have a negative impact on mental health. So these are things that we know that we can work on. And one of the things, I'm not sure if I should get into this now, but one of the things that we have done in Mercer County Communities That Care, when we look at this and see what can we do about this and how can we, what kind of protective factors can we put in place and what kind of programs can we put in place to address this, one of those programs is a VEDM. And if you haven't yet heard of a VEDM, it really is a made-up word made up by students in Lancaster County, and it simply means I've got your back. And so we have instituted the VEDM clubs in most of the school districts here in the county in one way or another, whether it's in middle school or the high school level. And the idea of a VEDM is to just create a culture of kindness and compassion within the school. They are student-driven clubs, so the kids come up with what they want to do and what messages they want to get out to the rest of the student body. And the entire goal or the premise of a VEDM is to make sure that every single student in that school district feels accepted, appreciated, acknowledged, and cared for. Those are the 4 principles of a VEDM. So that's one such program that we're very proud to have instituted here in the county, that hopefully we can get to the, try to get to the ground level of addressing trauma.
Great, thank you. And to follow up on that, Sheri, maybe you can tell us about some other services that you have available.
Sure. As I mentioned before, we're so fortunate in Mercer County. We have some really great services available out here. Just those that are really in need of those services don't know that they exist or don't know how to access them. All of the service providers that we've worked with are very willing to work with families and meet them where they're at, and they understand their needs and what it means to be a young single mother with 3 kids. I could mention 1,000 things. The CTC program in Mercer County, we're so far ahead of the curve. When we need something in Mercer County, we're able to pull it in with just the resources that we have available here. I started listing what the resources are. There's some really great resource books in Mercer County. The League of Women's Voters do one. The county commissioners do one. The Behavioral Health Commission does a fabulous list of resources that are available to anyone in the county. But key to that also is through our United Way in Mercer County, we now have the 211 system. And it's 24 hours a day, always has staffed by a knowledgeable operator. And if any of your programs are not part of that, make sure you make that connection through probably Jim Miskey at the United Way office and get on there. They can answer questions from things like where senior citizens can get their taxes done for free, to how you can find housing if you have a felony conviction. They have those resources there at their fingertips, and it's available to anyone. And they've even added a text function with many of the families we work with now have that too. So I would encourage that as a great resource for us.
And maybe we can hear a little bit more about the SIPEN program.
Okay. CYPEN is the Children Youth Prevention and Empowerment Network. It is a solution-driven, systematic approach to addressing children and families in trauma. With the help of Buhl Regional Health Foundation and Mercer County Behavioral Health Strumbu Foundation, the first thing we were able to do was hire a project manager who has really put together a lot of the administrative work and the technological component to CYPEN. We have, again, our 4G network that I already mentioned. There's a lot of information on the brochures. Our strongest piece is the collaborative partners that we have working with us. Just in a short list, we have the 21st Century Community Leaders, AmeriCorps, AWARE. We have Capable Kids, who's providing screenings for our children, community arts experience. We're working with Haven Professional Counseling. Another significant piece would be, again, Penn State Shenango, who we have some interns with, Primary Health Network Foundation, who right now is providing us the space, and hopefully we'll be purchasing that space. But overall, I would say the strongest component would be our alert system, which was established by Pastor BJ, our project manager. And whenever there is a child that is in trauma within our agencies, or a mom who is having some sort of coping mechanisms because she has unmet needs, they are able to actually contact us at this number that was on the screen there, and an alert will go out. A text alert is set up to go out to all of our partners that are participating with us, so that they could at least first respond that they received the notification within 24 hours. not 3 weeks later, but within 24 hours. And then we begin to work on a plan to help that family or that particular child overcome that crisis. So, I mean, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of the Children Youth Prevention and Empowerment Network. We call it CYPEN, CYPEN. And again, we do need more community members to get involved so that we can close those opportunity and those system gaps in the county, and everyone is speaking to the same family through one aligned approach and one network, and without bouncing families from brick and mortar to brick and mortar, but actually working together in a collaborative unit.
Thank you. We are starting out of time, and so for our last question, I would just like each of you to talk about what you consider to be the area of greatest need, and then how you would propose addressing that. And I'm going to let Bailey start us off with this one.
Okay. So coming from Mercer County, I think our greatest need overall is I feel a lot of people are food insecure. Even seeing that through my high school experience, that the backpack program really helped, and I feel like the families there actually really tried to get that on board and got students involved. But teaching needs to happen. We need to start talking about adverse childhood, all of that in class. We need to start doing it in science class, doing experiments. We need to start talking about the history of adverse childhood experiences, and we need to just start talking about that more. Is this also where I talk about my life story? Okay, so this is a trigger warning. I am a level 8 on the ACE scale, so just be warned. I'm gonna get through 20 years of childhood trauma in 3 minutes. So, so I was born into poverty. I still am considered to be under the poverty line. My father was a hardcore alcoholic. We make jokes about it now because it's a little less serious now, but back then when I was a child, he was pretty gnarly. And he was also incredibly abusive, which isn't funny to talk about, but yeah, whenever he got drunk, he would just like to hit women and his children. So that's something I had to deal with. Also, he lost his job because he showed up to work drunk. He worked at the mill, and he ended up losing his job, and that was obviously a bad thing. And my mother at this time had decided to divorce him, which was a big deal to her because she was very religious and she didn't really believe in divorce, and so she had to do that for herself. And this is when we really started to struggle financially, mentally, emotionally. And the first thing that went bye-bye was my mom's bipolar meds, which ended up just screwing us even worse. Seriously, take your meds. Sorry. And yeah, that's where through about the age of 6 all the way to high school, we were incredibly food insecure. I don't know how many people in this room have ever had Velveeta shells. Even thinking about them makes me want to throw up. I ate that every single day for years. That and ramen soup. I can eat the beef and the shrimp, the chicken. Never again. Never again. That was the worst of it. And I make jokes about it now because at the time I didn't realize that it wasn't normal. I thought that, everyone just did this and this was a normal thing. And we would also go to laundromats because we obviously didn't have washer or drying machine. And we would look for spare change. And the person that won ended up getting an extra small fry from McDonald's. I know it's sad, but we made the best out of the situation. And so until mom took a new job at Giant Eagle as the head of the meat department, she loved it. And my sister and I got part-time jobs working at Dairy Queen. We were really hard. We were doing pretty bad financially, but we ended up getting a little bit better until my mom had a life-altering injury. My mom at work ended up slipping on an empty pallet with 80 pounds of meat in her hands and ended up damaging permanently her sciatic nerve in her back. So, and during the surgery to repair it, which it should have worked, they left a piece of the actual drainage tube in her back. So she ended up getting really sick from that. And so her entire sciatic nerves, she has no feeling in her legs at all. she's able to like stumble around still, like she can get up and like stumble around. But then to make matters worse, during homecoming weekend, actually, my mom snuck out of the house and broke her femur. So now she's like in a hospital bed in my living room. So yeah, so I go home, I get her ready, and I take her to physical therapy for 3 hours almost every single day. But it's not all negative because I'm still here. And I think, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think it's because I had a really great relationship with a lot of my teachers. I'm very thankful because actually tomorrow night there's a Pettis Media Mentor Award, and I'm able to like, give a award to like basically my mom. So I'm very excited. And I had a teacher named Mr. Glass in high school, and he was actually, this is going to be really sad, he's the first man that I feel like ever like truly cared about me, and I didn't realize that men could be nice. I know that's like wild, but I truly, like, he was life-changing. But because of my childhood and upbringing, I became a deadline worker and an excellent multitasker, even to this day. To save time, I type all my notes in class, and then I do like speech so like I can listen to them while I clean and I get everything done because I do all of the household work. So that multitasking helps. And I also learned the value of money and how to differentiate between wants versus needs. I feel like that's a thing that a lot of kids my age like don't really think about. They're like, oh, I want the new iPhone. Oh no, you need to start, making loan payments. You need to start putting money away so that eventually that you're able to be more successful and start putting things in, investing the money back in, so then you're able to retire early or put that back into your community. Okay, people don't understand that. I figured that if I wanted a better life, I had to make it myself. And that's why I came to Teal College, and that's why everyone's really sick of seeing my face, because I just try to get involved in everything that I can and try to work myself to death, because I want to make sure that I have enough skills to differentiate myself between me and every other person in the school. I'm not saying that it's good for children to go through ACSEs, but it's all about the framework in order to use those experiences to your advantage. If my score is 8 and I found a way to get through it, there is hope that there is a way to get past it and try to grow for everyone. Thank you.
Now that's a hard story to follow. But I give you a lot of credit, Bailey. And I think Harry maybe said earlier that a lot of people that do have high ACEs scores do go into the kind of careers of helping and getting involved and doing everything you can. So congratulations to you for where you are now, Bailey. And something that Bailey said when you asked about what we need to do, we need to build on relationships. If you've ever heard our county coroner, John Libinati, and Allison Stover from Capable Kids have a presentation that they do on building relationships. And that's something that you said here, was those relationships that you made with some of your professors and a high school teacher. Relationships can help us build resiliency. So we need to continue to work on building relationships within our communities, within our homes, within our schools, our own families. And that's...
Yeah.
Want to add to that?
I really think I just want to echo what Laura said there. And don't be afraid to ask. The resources are there available for you, and there's always a way. I was thinking about this time of year with the snow, an issue for a lot of our families are warm winter coats that fits. If you had young kids, last year's coat is not going to fit this year, and that's always a hardship for them. And I spoke about that at a couple different meetings, and we got connected through the United Way. Actually, Bob Piccarelli, the PNC folks, have the Warm Coats for Kids program, and that's a need that I didn't know existed, but we were able to share that with our families, and we're really fortunate in this day and age. I think people are starting to recognize that we need to help each other. If you know better, you do better, and sometimes it takes a lot of teaching to change that mindset so that you do know better. But when you do, you can do better. our families in the last few years, I'm going to say in the last 10 years, really we've hit the struggle with first the methamphetamines and now, of course, the opioids. And, you know, that was way out of our wheelhouse, what we do with that. We've been able to connect with the Roar Center, with Bethel Life Church, the things that Ben Zimmer's doing out there. And the resources are there. The needs change every day, but so do the resources.
What do I believe we need to do as a valley? Two that I could think of. One is to our faith-based community. We need to continue to come together more and pray this dark cloud that exists over the valley, that's visible, that people that don't even live in the valley often see when they're driving into the valley, and they say they know when they're approaching Mercer County because there's this dark cloud. And it's the despair, it's the hopelessness, it's the depression, the anxiety, all these things that we've developed the stigma concerning that nobody really wants to admit or talk about, and it's affecting our young children. So I definitely believe that the faith-based community definitely needs to tear down a lot of our barriers and walls and come together for that particular need. And then secondly, on the educational spectrum, we need more opportunities. We do. And when I look at the first 2,000 days again, oftentimes us as a professional, we're viewed as babysitters and daycare workers. And those are some of the words that I despise the most. Because when your heart is in it and you're doing your best to prepare young children to be ready for school and transition into the kindergarten classroom with these great outcomes, we need to create opportunities also for those parents that are trying to hold it down for their family who are stuck to also go forward and get some sort of education, create some sort of awareness so that they can begin to, move forward in time and not continue to live in a moment that has kept them in a stagnant place for years. That was my success story. To God be the glory, and I'm grateful for the Trade Readjustment Act in 1993 that was put forth for everyone who worked at Sharon Steel to go back and get an education. And so in that year, I enrolled at Penn State Shenango, and that is when I began to develop some sort of self-awareness of who I was and who God created me to be and why I had to go through what I went through in life. And then it challenged me to continue on with my education so that I could help others. So, all right, that's it, faith-based and opportunities.
Thank you all very much for your comments and your time today. Let's thank them one more time, please.